If you're new here, my name's Jay and welcome to the Daily Ride. Today I'm going to talk about a topic close to my heart, and that's the accommodation choices when you're bikepacking. Now, to a lot of people, bikepacking is synonymous with camping, but there are other options there, and in some instances it can be a good idea to give camping a miss and try something else instead. So what I'm going to do today is look at the various types of accommodation that you can choose when you're out on the road. I'll look at the pros and the cons in each instance. Let's get going. Let's look at the most obvious choice, which is camping. One of the biggest reasons you might choose to camp, especially if you're in an expensive area, say you're in Europe, North America, is cost. There's no doubt if you're camping, even if you're staying in a regulated site, it's going to be much cheaper than staying in a hotel, motel, bed and breakfast, something like that. If you do choose to stay in an organised campsite, if you're in somewhere like California, they have some great state campsites and you can stay for as little as $10. I think in Canada it can be quite expensive. Europe, I'm not sure, but you might pay the equivalent of $20, $30 euros. But it depends on the facilities. Some of the campsites, you can even get restaurants. You'll almost certainly get a shower block, which is great, and you probably get a little shop as well. If you're not choosing to use a campground, then your alternative is to wild camp, and that reduces the cost to zero. That means you're going to set up pretty much anywhere. Now, it is really important that if you go down the option of wild camping, you get permission to stay on the land that you're camping on, otherwise you're trespassing. There are certain areas, say in Scotland, in the UK, where you can wild camp anywhere, and that's a great facility to have, but you really need to check ahead whatever area you're in. Moving on, another great thing I think about camping is the fact that it's really convenient when you're on a long trip. It's usually much easier to find either a campsite or to wild camp than it is to find any alternative sort of accommodation like a lodge, bed and breakfast, motel, that kind of thing. They're not always available the more you go into the wilds. And the final thing, and I think equally important as the cost, is the fact that you can really get the feel of nature around you. You can immerse yourself in nature, and if you're bikepacking and you're going away for even a long weekend, it's a wonderful thing to be able to immerse yourself in nature. Let's move on to some of the cons. I think one of the worst things about camping is the time that it actually takes to set up your tent, set up your gear. You've probably brought your own food with you, you have to cook as well, and then at the end clear everything away. And especially if you're in the backcountry, you have to worry about bears, you have to throw all your food over a tree in a separate area or in a bear bag or something like that. In the morning then you have to go through the same process of cooking again, clearing away and taking down the tent. It's time consuming, it's energy consuming, and it can be quite demoralising, especially if you've had a hard ride the night before. That's something I really, really dislike about camping. And the second thing I would say is the levels of comfort are not really as high as when you're in a motel, hotel, staying with friends or whatever. More experienced campers, they have a better camp setup and they mitigate against things like excess cold or excess heat or things like that, but it can be quite hard to get the setup exactly right. And the final thing, I think if it is raining and the weather's particularly harsh, staying in a tent, it's that demoralising, energy sapping kind of experience, and the next day you wake up, you might not have had the best night's sleep, and it can be quite difficult to sum up the energy for a long ride the next day. I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to go to the opposite end of the scale from camping when it comes to bikepacking accommodation, which is hotels. It's fantastic to stay in a hotel after a long day's ride. It really is. It doesn't matter if weather's really cold, really hot, or even perfect. The convenience of just pulling into a hotel, everything being ready in there for you, getting into a shower, being able to easily clean your clothes, dry them, and having a wonderful comfy bed. It can be glorious. Unfortunately, as we've talked about in the last section, we can't always afford to do that, and that's why sometimes hotels, especially on longer trips, tend to be confined to possibly cities where camping could be quite difficult for safety reasons. Now, people do refer to bikepacking when you're staying in hotels as credit card touring, credit card bikepacking, and yeah, that's a good description. But there's one thing that really does annoy me, and I want to get it out here, that there is a small portion of the bikepacking community. They look down on people who do credit card touring, credit card bikepacking. It's ridiculous. If you have the money and you can stay in the Hilton Hotel and Marriott every single night for a month, do it. I'm jealous, but I think it's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And the people that do look down and think you have to sleep in a ditch or sleep in your tent or sleep on a park bench in a toilet or something like that to be a real bikepacker, I think it's ridiculous. It drives a wedge between all of us. And please, any of you that are the sleep in the ditch type and look down on people that actually go credit card touring bikepacking, please just stop it. It's ridiculous. It's childish. Okay, going to move on to the second great thing about staying in hotels, and that is the safety element. If you're in a tent, you can feel vulnerable to people coming into the tent, highly unusual, or wild animals being around. Again, the incidence of people having problems is really small and it shouldn't be overstated, but I think it's more of a mindset that you feel more safe when you're actually in a hotel. And the other thing as well, it also means your bike's either in the room with you, or a lot of hotels now have secure rooms or let you leave the bike in the office. So I think that's two good reasons. And the final reason I would say is that there's no decamping required or setting up camp. You don't have to spend all that time and energy, which can really be draining, setting up your camp, taking it back down, or cooking. Okay, going to move on now to the next type of accommodation, which is hostels. I think are a great alternative to hotels, motels, bed and breakfast. First reason is obviously that they're much more affordable, probably about a third to a quarter of the price. But it's not only about costs, because another thing I do like about hostels is a much more kind of a sociable environment. In fact, my first experience, I would say going bikepacking, but this was 1972, maybe more bike touring, was staying in Youth Hostel Association accommodation when I was in the UK. I was actually touring with my mother then, 12 years old. And the camaraderie, the people you met, it was fantastic. And I did a lot of youth hosteling until I was 18 or 19, and I've stayed in hostels subsequently, and even in the last couple of years. I do like that social element, and if you're in the right mindset, it can be great, and you can meet people that you can even join in and enjoy the rest of your trip with. The final thing is that you tend to get better facilities than you do in a hotel, even a high-class hotel, because they have very large open areas, generally speaking, where you'll have either a sitting area, an eating area, and the kitchens can be absolutely superb, they really can. And also, it's not unusual to have a very good laundry area, which, let's face it, as bikepackers, we're always looking to wash our clothes, as well as great shower blocks as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of hostels. If you're in that really sociable mindset, it's a great place to be. But not surprisingly, there are some downsides. The first one is you generally will be in a dorm room. That's not always the case, but generally the case. The ones I've stayed in recently in San Francisco, there were 4 people. in the room, including myself, but it was fine. The people were really, really nice and I got on great with them. But if you're not the kind of person that feels comfortable to be sharing a room with 3 strangers, this really would not be for you. There is more of a lack of privacy, and especially when you're sleeping with 3 people that might be snoring or moving around. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but not a deal breaker in my experience. The second thing that I feel probably is a disadvantage, the comfort level is not as high as, say, a hotel, a motel, even camping. The beds are not always wonderful. The mattresses can be a bit thin. It does vary from hostel to hostel, but it's something you have to be aware of, beg your pardon, and don't be surprised if the beds aren't quite as comfortable as you might expect. And the final negative is down to sometimes overcrowding, because as bikepackers we may be actually touring, travelling, moving around in peak times, and if that's the case, then yeah, you could expect the hostel to be quite full. Okay, moving on, warm showers. Warm showers I honestly love. I think it's great that we have that as travelling cyclists, being bikepacking, bike touring. It's a service that's dedicated towards bikepackers and bike tourers. It's completely free, which is one of the big pluses. So if, say, you're in America and you want to travel to Europe and you're going through France and Spain, you can contact people by the website of the app and arrange to stay in hosts' houses for free. Money never changes hands, never. And that's a huge, huge plus. And you can stay in some absolutely amazing places. You really can. So to be able to stay, say, in the centre of Milan for nothing, there's not many ways you can do that otherwise. The thing about warm showers is you can only use this facility when you're actually physically touring. That's the agreement between people hosting and people being hosted. Now, I've been hosted myself when I went to America. I was in California. I stayed in about 7 or 8 different homes. It was a fantastic experience, it really was. And when I'm in Thailand, I host people in my home as well, and I get a lot out of it, I really do. I think to share those stories between each other, which leads me on to the second point, is those shared kind of experiences. It really is, it's a great thing, and I get a great kick out of it. If I'm touring and I'm on the road myself, it's good to get kind of local knowledge, local experience from your hosts, and they can tell you, oh yeah, you should take this route, that route. When people come stay with me, it's good to see where they're going, and if I can help them and help them avoid places that are probably not worth going to, then yeah, I think that's a huge, huge positive. The last big pro for me, it's just that sense of community. If you're staying with someone you've never met, it feels like you really do. You meet as strangers and you leave as friends. I've met so many people in cycling community through warm showers, and I'm actually excited to get the opportunity, hopefully, to visit these people again. It's not all it's not all positives though. There are a few negatives, and these are what I think are probably the kind of the little glitches with warm showers. I think the first thing, it's highly unpredictable, and you need to be aware of that. Usually you would message someone a day or 2 days before, and you can end up messaging 3 or 4 people that might not get in touch, or 3 might get in touch. You do have to arrange it, and depending where you are, how many other people are touring at the time, they may be already hosting. You just never know. It's not like booking a hotel, so you can't rely on it. You have to have really a backup in mind in case something falls through. Once you've made the arrangements, it's generally no problem at all, but you must be aware that you can't rely on it. One thing I should mention, and with the whole warm showers thing, is that as a host or someone that's being hosted, you have the opportunity to leave a review after your stay, and that kind of keeps everyone honest, because before I host anyone, I always read their reviews to see did everything go well with the previous hosts, and vice versa. People who are on the road and they're looking for a host to look and see, well, what did other cyclists say about this host? So you may have a kind of a feeling, which is on the second point about the experience, that it can be kind of lacking privacy, and you might be worried about the person you're being hosted by. But I would say you don't need to be, because all you need to do is like really focus on those reviews and read the last 5 or 6, and if they're all positive, then you know you should have a good experience. And the lack of privacy you'll have staying in someone's home, it'll be okay. And most people, I hope including myself, I try to make people as welcome and at home as I possibly can when they stay with me. The last negative is it's highly varied in quality. Sometimes the host will only offer camping in their grounds. Other times you may be on the couch. You may have to share a bathroom, you might not. You might have your own room with an ensuite. I've stayed in a whole like a garden house before, so it's so wild the kind of varied accommodation you're going to stay in. But I will say that even though that is varied, the website and the app will tell you exactly what to expect. So if you're not going to turn up and expect a room and end up camping, that's there in black and white on the app and the website, so you can know what to expect. Yeah, that's it with Warmshowers. If any of you come to Thailand, I'm actually here at the time, come and stay with me. Honestly, I'd love to host you, so make sure you sign up for Warmshowers. There is a small fee, that could be a negative, a fourth negative, but it's only $30, and that's for a lifetime, and it's very small. I think if you use the app rather than the website, you have to pay something like $2.99 a month, but if you only do all your communication through the website, it's free. Staying with friends and family, it's the last on the list, and it's another highly cost-effective way that you can organise your bikepacking trip. Probably not practical if you're going on a long journey, but if it's a long weekend or a couple of days, you might be able to actually pull this off and stay for free with friends and relatives. Like either being hosted or alternatively with wild camping, the big advantage, it's free, and who doesn't like to do something for free? Other advantages, it's that familiarity. If it's with friends and family, you know them, so it's probably a lot more comfortable than staying with a host who you've never met before. And the third advantage, well, you do get all those home amenities. You've probably been to the home before and you really know what to expect. But as far as disadvantages go, one of the biggest problems is probably going to be availability. If you can actually time everything up with your friend or relative to stay when you need to. It's going to be a bit hit and miss, but yeah, if it works, that's fantastic. The other thing is that there's always that kind of problem with friends and relatives. You don't want to impose on them, so it depends how well you get on with them. If you get on great with them, then that's fine, though. You could say then if you don't particularly get on well, maybe that's an opportunity to actually work on your relationship. So I don't know if that's a negative or a positive. And I would say that's really it. I'm going to just put a couple of disadvantages there. I think when you can stay with friends and relatives, for me, that would be a fantastic choice. And okay, I think that pretty much rounds things up. But now I'll just finish up with a few final thoughts. I think all of these are great options. I don't care which I use personally, because whichever option I'm using for bikepacking accommodation, it means I'm out there enjoying myself on the bike. Yes, camping would probably be number one, but it's not always possible. And as I mentioned before, especially in cities. That's all for now. I'll be interested to hear what kind of accommodation you use. Maybe there's something I've missed out here. If there is, well, tell me what it is and tell me about your experiences. Until then, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.